Hello, this is Amanda Olson, and this is my final project summary presentation for Info 244. For my final project, I decided to do a LibGuide. I've never created a LibGuide before. I'm a new librarian at my local public library. I work at the reference desk in the adult and teen section, and my specific patrons have a very particular genre that they look for when they come in and ask for help finding books, and that genre is fiction that is slower paced and specifically not very graphic in terms of sexual content. So it's a public library and we have a very diverse set of books in the collection, and there's definitely a specific type that my patrons are looking for. And so I use Novelist to help me find books for them that meet their criteria. And I thought, what a great idea to create a LibGuide that would show patrons in my area of a certain demographic and age range how to use Novelist to search for books that use the chaste limiter in Novelist under the refined searches, and I show that in the LibGuide itself. So without further ado, let's get started on the presentation. So for the goals and purposes of this project, I want to define my role. As mentioned previously, I am a reference desk assistant librarian for adults and teens at my local public library. The goals for this project outlined in this presentation is to educate patrons on what Novelist is and where to find it, how to access and use Novelist at our local library, and a list of relevant keywords and novels to get patrons started on a search. As mentioned previously, patrons come in looking for a very specific type of fiction, and it's a public library. We have lots of different types of books, lots of different content, and so it's been important for me to become more familiar with keywords and types of authors that meet that specific genre that my patrons are looking for. And one of the services I use is Novelist to help me find books for my patrons. And I thought, what a great idea to create a LibGuide that would help my patrons know what Novelist is and how to use it to find the squeaky clean books that they're looking for. Again, my target audience is city patrons at my local public library, and it's particularly ages women, 12 to 60 plus. They're looking for a specific genre of fiction, and again, they usually want something squeaky clean. So that's where Novelist has a really great search function that I use, and I use for myself and for them. So let's see. For my initial LibGuide, I will confess that it was not very professional and hard to use. My original idea was really big and grandiose, and I had all these ideas, but I needed to do research on my specific target audience and what would be useful for them. I'm not working, you know, in an academic library or a special library. This is just my local public library with everyday patrons just looking for everyday books, and I needed to keep that in mind. The wording needed refinement and clarification. I work with a lot of seniors and people who are not very tech savvy, and as I've engaged with them in research for this project, I realized the wording has to be very simple and very clear. So initially my LibGuide was too complicated and it needed to be simplified. Working at the reference desk, I was able to get lots of good feedback on what patrons are looking for, what type of a website is useful for them. I was asking questions of patrons and finding answers that I would put into my guide. Something else I needed to do was adjust the font sizes. Again, some of these dear sweet patrons are a little in their senior years, and using very small fonts or complicated fonts would be a little too much for them to follow. The wording needed to be detailed, not wordy, but detailed enough so that they would know, move your mouse here, click here, here's a screenshot of this button. Lots of pictures were used in my LibGuide to show them how to do a basic search on Novelist and how to find the refined limiter or the search option for specifically chaste books, because that's what they were looking for. Again, it's an ongoing process, but I was able to refine my LibGuide to a nice little site that it is today. Testing and finished site. So the LibGuide for clean book searches is what I eventually ended up with. Again, I included lots of pictures. I had to refine the search, the search page, the page that explains how to do a search on Novelist, with lots of pictures, and I had to outline every step. Had to make sure to explain everything because, again, as I've worked with patrons, it is very easy for them to get lost, and so having each step outlined with pictures made it very user-friendly. I tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. I gave prompts for when they needed to log in and what information they needed to have ready, such as a library card number and a PIN. And I used wording that was not technical or library exclusive.